People are starting to zoom in, so or join in through there. But thank you everyone for joining. My name's Ari Lewis. I host, as some of you may or may not know, a weekly conversation with people about building brands on digital platforms. So today I have Jeff Leo Herman, digital media expert and the owner and investor CEO of the Youngstown Business Journal. For that, he was at Nielsen, worked at a variety of other media companies, both digital media and traditional media. So Jeff would love to hear from you about your background and your words, and we could sort of jump into it and start the conversation.
Excellent. Ari, thanks for having me today.
Yeah, no, thanks for joining.
Yeah, getting to know you so far and love the content you produce and love the dynamic way you do it. So this should be fun.
Yeah. So Jeff, if you don't mind, I guess in your own words, can you talk about your history, sort of from I guess when you graduated to your experience now, and just a brief 1 minute, 2 minute background.
History.
Yeah, but sort of give the 1 minute elevator pitch.
Yeah, the 1 minute. I won't talk about mullets from 1988 when I graduated.
Got it.
It won't be good. No, I'm boomerang back to Youngstown. So I'm coming to you live from Youngstown, Ohio, and I'm thrilled to be back here. Boomerang back a couple of years ago after 15 some odd years in Chicago, New York, and San Francisco, working with the Nielsen Company, in which I lived on the bleeding edge of technology. So the great thing about Nielsen, a massive global organization, and worked with the media companies and the brands. I worked with Disney, Fox, Hulu. I saw Hulu when it was just a baby. And the whole idea was how to help brands and media companies monetize digital media platforms. So with the emergence of the internet in '99, how to measure internet audiences and market share, getting into online video measurement, video game measurement, mobile media measurement, you name it, we tried to measure it because the brands and the media companies needed to know how to monetize that. So after a great career working with amazing people and having the opportunity to travel globally, left the brand-centric world and went into the funnel-centric world of digital marketing, search engine optimization, pay-per-click, conversion rate optimization, email marketing, the real nitty-gritty ninja level tactics of marketing. So it was kind of cool to live in the upper funnel for a long time and then kind of travel down the funnel for the longest time, building lead to revenue management programs, working with brands like Salesforce and Marketo, from a professional services firm and a digital marketing firm. And then broke away from that and started my own boutique advisory, which led me to invest in the Youngstown Publishing Company, which is publisher of the Business Journal here in Youngstown. And I moved, after moving back to Youngstown, I really wanted to invest in a platform. My thesis is on the power of audiences. And if you have an audience, no matter how small it is, if it's loyal, it's powerful. And so to the extent that when I joined the organization, we roughly had 1.5 business models, advertising and subscriptions. And there are 6 potential business models we're building out. And of course, it takes time. And of course, the coronavirus crisis was the worst and the best thing to ever happen to us. Amazing from a page views standpoint. We're off the chart. We quadrupled our audience. Amazing. But just challenging because of the model is the revenue flow, model is advertising. So we really had to grind and hustle, but we made it through and we're hopefully on the other side of this. And so that was like a 2-minute intro. Does that work for you? All right.
Yeah, no, that was really great. I appreciate it. So, I want to touch on the power of audiences. So one of, I think, the recurring themes we talk about, and one of the things that is important in my writing and through these conversations is, how you can build a following, whether it's, a web audience, email lists, social media followings, and how that just builds and multiplies on itself. I think a lot of people, whether they're professional service firms or, they're selling a product, they aren't necessarily building an audience all the time. And I see this a lot in the professional services world where they're still having their business meetings, doing their coffees. It's very manual finding customers. Can you talk deeper about your thesis on the power of an audience, but also, why it's so important for, no matter what business you're in, to start building out that audience and leveraging it to get business.
Right. Anything I'm about to say, if anyone on this stream is a fan of Joe Pulizzi, Cleveland resident, godfather of content marketing, I'm about to parrot what he says.
Yeah.
So I have to give Joe Pulizzi all the credit in the world for starting the content marketing movement. And his book, Killing Marketing, was a major influence on why I really wanted to invest in niche media companies. Before I get into parroting Joe, the thing you mentioned, Ari, that was important, audiences. What is an audience? There are varying levels of quality of the audience, right? And there's a continuum. On the low end, the lowest of the low is your social media audience. You don't own them. The platform owns them. The connection to them is tenuous. At any moment, the platform could take your audience away unless you pay to get in front of them. So the best way to still manage your audience today is an email list, right? So that's still the holy grail. And once again, I'm kind of parroting, no, I'm not kind of, I'm absolutely parroting Joe Pulizzi. If you build an email list, that is the most scalable, universal way to at least have some semblance of controlling your own destiny. So kind of shifting gears into the power of audiences, as you said, every company is a media company. We all have a global production and distribution platform in our hands, right? This is your own Hollywood movie studio. And so anyone with passion, commitment, and a unique point of view can build a global audience. And to the extent that you can directly access and influence your audience, you have the tools and the power to do so. It's just having the framework and the methodology to execute. And that's where we kind of get into this idea of niche audiences, because you do have to start small. You do have to start really focused and embrace a list that's 5 people, 10 people, 20 people, 50 people big, because if you cater to those individuals, I'll reference Kevin Kelly and 1,000 True Fans, you really only need 1,000 true fans to build a pretty nice sized business from that standpoint. So it's really about, well, I have one more thing to say, then I'll stop my rant here a little bit. So why audiences, or why should a B2B firm build an audience? That's a question. Why every company is a media company? Because people want information, not a sales presentation. And so the philosophy I kind of stick to is educate to dominate. If you educate your market, if you educate your audience, you'll dominate your market. And so through education, and once again, that upper funnel, getting people out of status quo mode into research, consider, and then commit mode, the way to do that and walk them through the funnel is through starting with education, building trust and credibility, and becoming a trusted advisor. And then when the timing is right, boom, they feel like they already know you. There's a comfort level with you, and there's a point of view that you shared. And then that's where you can ask for the order. And it's,
hey, Jeff, I think I can't hear you. I don't know. Is that just me or?
No,
something just happened. Hello.
It's so good too.
Uh-oh, it's on my end. Sorry, everyone. Wait 1 sec. My bad, guys.
Yeah. Well, I was talking too much anyway.
No, I something happened on my end. That was very weird. Apologies, guys. My headphones, I don't know, just switching to the Bluetooth, my speaker here. But anyhow, that was really helpful. And I got the gist of it, except the last 20 seconds.
You don't want me to repeat that?
No. Move on. I have some thoughts on that, but before I do, I want to get to a question in the chat. So someone's asking about the creator revolution and sort of what I think, and Marielle, just correct me if I'm wrong or jump in if I'm not asking the question properly. But I think one of the things we're seeing is, you're a publisher and, you're monetizing, advertising, subscriptions to conferences, stuff like that. But what we're seeing is more and more people monetize via their influence and themselves, right? The people are becoming publishers, and what we're also seeing is, right, there's all these new tool sets coming up. So, Substack is one which I talk about frequently that helps people launch paid newsletters. Shopify is a platform for e-commerce. Where are there other opportunities you think that, we'll call it, unbundling that funnel of things that you guys had to either build out technology that was built for like enterprise, larger companies that we're going to start seeing, individuals like, an Instagram fitness influencer with 100,000 fans, tools like that. Where do you think that? Oh, and she says, perfect. That's the exact question. Where do you think that's going to go? Do you think there's going to be more tools like that? Where are there opportunities sort of within that funnel?
I mean, there's technology, there's plumbing, there's the mechanics of getting it's really about your belief, your unique point of view, your passion, and then getting that passion presented in a way to reach audiences. And so I've burned through so many tools. I remember BeLive TV, and then here we are on StreamYard, and then I've been hammering Zoom for a while. And then you have tools like Canva, which are critical for just creating very nice images, just really template-driven images. There's always a new tool, and I try to embrace an experiment. Like I just literally wrapped up using Lumen 5 to make, you pump a blog into Lumen 5, and that grabs B-roll and text overlay, and it just creates a nice little way to present information. But I just go back to the fact that if you have, passion, commitment, and a unique point of view, people are willing to put up with kind of some crummy delivery sometimes if it's good stuff, right? So the more polished, the worse off you are. So I'm a big believer in authenticity, and I tried working the hashtag obviously authentic on LinkedIn for a while, because I don't do anything really crafty. I just hit LinkedIn hard, and I just use my iPhone. And I've tried Instagram. I get entertained on TikTok, but I don't do them myself. But tried and true LinkedIn all day, every day. It's still good organic reach. Great organic reach, in fact.
Got it. By the way, can you hear me well? Because someone said in the chat that, I think sorry guys, I don't know what was going on, having some technical difficulties. And to your point, like trying 90 different technologies, and you think by now I would have it, and somehow I'm having an issue. But that there shouldn't be any more technology issues. Going back to, and I see this in the chat as well, but going back to your comments on, building an audience, I think a lot what you talked about was like educating the audience and not necessarily selling them in the beginning. So, you're talking about authenticity, you're talking about building educational content, both from, what you've seen, and then also what you guys have done yourself, whether with companies you advise, the stuff you do at the Youngstown Business Journal. Can you sort of talk about what that means to like educate the audience and find ways to create a unique reason for them to follow you? Because there's so much information out there. People say news is commoditized, content is commoditized. How do you be that differentiator to add a unique value proposition so people are following you and the content is very unique?
Yeah, that's a tough one. That's almost the hardest thing to do, to make it truly unique. And I view things like a maturity curve. So on LinkedIn, for example, I have a maturity curve, which you can be an observer, a participant, a curator, or a creator. And I spend, as much as I love creating content and creating videos, and I have a blast, really just repackaging information in interesting ways, I do a ton of curation. So I take an article, and in the case, so I have two worlds, right? I have the world of hyperlocal Youngstown, focused on economic development and our brain gain, and on the transformation of this local market to really into a region that is really kind of shaking off the rust of the Rust Belt. right? So there's that standpoint. So I curate the heck out of economic development articles. Voltage Valley is a new hashtag I've been hitting pretty hard because we have Lordstown Motors. It's an electric truck manufacturer coming into town. General Motors and LG Chem are building a battery plant, a joint venture for a battery plant. So I just always look for opportunities to curate articles on economic development in this region. And then on a more broad national perspective, where with my firm, Madison, Michigan and Market, my advisory firm, really just look to take unique perspectives around the intersection of sales and marketing alignment and how content drives sales productivity. And that's a phrase I've been hammering for 5 or 6 years now. I look back at really bad YouTube videos I did in 2015. Like, they're horrible. I can't believe I even did them. But you don't get decent today unless you're willing to do horrible stuff early on. So anyone that hasn't started yet, get started. Be comfortable with being just kind of horrible at production, and it'll get better. It'll really get better. But just pick something and really drill into it, and just pick a hashtag or pick a point of view and stick to it. And all the sound bites I've given you through our open, if people have or haven't heard me, I've literally been playing those sound bites for 5 years now.
So I guess, in terms of, going and choosing, you chose in your case, like, local news in Youngstown. I guess one, like, what was your reasoning and motivation for investing in the Youngstown Business Journal and Youngstown, or is it publishing company is the holding company?
Yeah, the holding company is the Youngstown Publishing Company, which publishes the Business Journal, the Brain Gain Advocacy Platform, and also an entertainment, culture and entertainment site. But it's the application of my thesis. So it's a way in which I learn every single day. We produce 10 to 15 fresh pieces of content every single day, and write subject lines every single day, and look at our analytics every single day. And so I learned so much in that. News is such a competitive industry, and it's constantly flowing. And we absolutely have to say we are straight down the middle. We're not on the left or the right. We blaze right down the middle, focused on economic development and entrepreneurship and workforce development, all the things that are good for a region. So we keep it positive. But my ability to see what works in that news cycle and test what gets clicks and opens really helps my broader marketing strategy, my marketing initiatives, because I have these giant sampling points of consistently publishing content, and I can apply that in many cases to broader, more strategic B2B applications because of the things I learn every day. So it's just amazing. And simply the people at the Youngstown Publishing Company, 35 years building a great audience. The publisher and founder is an amazing person, dyed-in-the-wool journalist, so passionate about her craft. Everyone there is passionate about the craft. And I have such respect for them. And I'm super commercial, and so it's fun to have those, I have a degree of journalism, or not a degree in journalism, but I have a journalistic perspective, but highly commercial in my approach to everything. So, it's just been a great experience all the way around.
So some hard-hitting questions, and I don't know if you'll be able to answer them, or sort of if, we could shift gears a bit. But I guess, from my perspective, I do a lot of research on, the news industry and specifically the newspaper industry. And I know you guys only physically deliver like once a month, right? Or it's twice a month. But do you think there's like inverse incentives in the physical newspaper industry, and sort of, I don't know if that's the right word, but essentially hard-hitting journalism has it's not rewarded by, profit and revenue. So, you could have 100 Pulitzer Prize winners at your newspaper and report great, but like, if you're not getting eyeballs, advertisers don't give you money. And yes, you can rely on subscriptions. One, do you think that's sort of affecting how content is created? But two, do you think, that means that the model's going to shift where like people who want hard hitting journalism, it's going to be subscription only? Like what do you see? And well, also, do you even agree with the thesis that I'm suggesting? You know, on that note, I guess to start.
Yeah. You have to have a portfolio. You have to have an editorial mission statement that's true, that you stick to on a consistent basis, and you don't deviate from your editorial mission statement. And you have to pay the bills. So that's why I have 6 business models in the publishing world. There's advertising, subscriptions, events, custom content, information services, and then marketing services. So those are the 6 models. And so that's the evolution that most, the newspaper industry specifically lived on classifieds and display ads. And, we are doing everything, and it's hard. Every day is hard. Every day is you got to just keep going. But we're doing everything in our power to diversify, to tell the stories that are important and to break news that's critical. Like, for example, the Business Journal, we received a grant from ProPublica. So one of our lead reporters, a well-respected veteran reporter on economic development, was given a year to research the history of economic development malfeasance in Youngstown. And we just came out with a report in May, and it was dense. I mean, I think we finally, he wrote more than 10,000 words on it. We published 6,000. There's going to be a second part. We did a lot of subsequent video packages. And we have an event with ProPublica here in 2 weeks, I believe, ProPublica is hosting this event. That story on the history of economic development malfeasance in Youngstown, from ProPublica's standpoint, it crushed it. It was in the high 6 figures as far as views. And that's, something that we wouldn't see just simply from a, sheer local standpoint. So you just have to figure out ways to tell those stories. And in this instance, we were fortunate enough to receive a grant from ProPublica to do that. Meanwhile, we have other things we're doing to fund high quality journalism, like information services, real estate transactions, things like custom content, custom video content, storytelling initiatives, creating narratives for companies that give them a way that's not promotional but educational, and just helping, you leverage the media point of view and the things we learn every single day producing media, and then applying that more in a B2B use case.
Got it. That's really helpful. And I guess on that note too, one of the questions I had that I've seen with the trend, you're talking about ProPublica, and they're 100% philanthropic in their revenue stream, right? So, are there a lot of, so the New Atlantic, right? They just announced they were rejecting Facebook's money. I don't know if you saw that. Or no, it's New Atlantic, which is a think tank, and I guess they produce a lot of research. Do you think that donation model and sort of that solicitation model of getting donors is a good model in media? Do you think, again, because they're rejecting Facebook's money, it's like, well, if I accept money from Facebook or I accept money from X, I can't write negatively about them, or I can't write critically about them. And I know, like with the Washington Post, right, they're owned by Amazon, and like there's that sort of can they write about Amazon? Do they write about Amazon? That they are critical, but like, are they truly critical? Is it truly objective journalism? Would love to, get your thoughts there.
Yeah, I mean, look, that's a great question. For the most part, I'll give credit to the Washington Post. Seems like they've maintained their integrity, and there's still a profound respect for journalism and this church and state model. And so, of all the billionaires that own publications, you have certain media companies with hardcore agendas, like News Corp has an agenda, right? They have an agenda. It's called Fox News, and they try to affect that agenda every single day. And I used to work with Fox News directly. I was their digital rep at Nielsen. So, I have respect for the individuals there. They've enjoyed the clients on a one-to-one basis, but there are certainly agendas from that standpoint. So, the reality of the situation is, because the bottom dropped out of the business model, to tell the stories you need to tell, you just have to pay the bills and you have to fund it. So the funding has to come from somewhere. So the donor-driven journalism, the foundation-driven journalism is important, but you just have to be transparent, and you just have to be really, disclose your underwriters, disclose kind of who's behind the scenes supporting it, and just, at the end of the day, it's integrity and credibility that wins. And so if there is, any type of report or lack of reporting, I'll say, that goes on, it gets found out. And there's always, there's the thing is with social media, there's so many watchdogs out there that, people call you out really easily. Sometimes it's warranted, and in many cases it's not, but it's just a tough thing. It's a really tough thing. And Facebook doling out money, Google News Initiative doling out money. I appreciate that. But at the same point, it's, well, here I am, it's like, what should I say about this? In hopes that I'd like that money. So from the local media standpoint, but it just, I think a lot of it is, a significant percent is for PR purposes from that standpoint, just to help those that they've, destroyed.
So, I guess that brings us to a, interesting recent event with the New York Times. Their editor resigned. So that there's a few points there. One is, the op-ed they published, from a broader trend perspective, I think it was very good. I'm sure clickbait wise, right? Like, got a ton of views, got a ton of audience. Is that model still there? Like, BuzzFeed hasn't been doing well. It's like a race to the bottom almost. So I think we'll start with that. Question one of like, before getting into the New York Times, but like the article was, clickbaity at the end of the day and very like controversial, and controversy drives views. Do you think that's still a model that people are relying on, or is that sort of like a race to the bottom model where, yeah, you could churn content, but like you're not a winner in the end of the day. You ultimately lose.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, that's as you said, BuzzFeed, they're struggling. That over time, people discover what the motivations are. They actually see what the drivers of the business are. So the clickbait model, I mean, Facebook it manufactures outrage, and there's, a big movement against Facebook these days because their business model is manufacturing outrage. And I'm sourcing Scott Galloway there, right? So I listen to Scott Galloway and Kara Swisher all the time. And I'm not sure how long, Facebook still, the usage is still growing significantly. And so there's all the debate of policing. And is Facebook a media platform, or is it a distribution platform? And if they're just distribution and they're hands off, they don't have to control the quality of the content. If they're media, then they have to stand behind the content that they deliver. And so there's I don't follow, I'm not much of a policy wonk. I just kind of enjoy marketing, but it is a race to the bottom, and it's just a tough balance every day is how do you create good content that gives audiences the information they need, and at the same time pay the bills. And then I'll just say kind of the last kind of random layer here is this actually does create opportunities for brands. So a B2B company can acquire a media publisher, say a trade media publisher, and they can become the news, right? And as long as their brand, it's a trusted and respected B2B brand, and they now say they acquire an industry trade pub, and they support ongoing journalism, and they actually become the educator, the facilitators of the industry dialogue. That's a great spot for journalism as well. And once again, as long as transparency is the key driver there, and it's well known who's behind the scenes, who's powering the platform, I think that's a model that we'll see, at least on the, from a commercial and from a marketing standpoint, from that altruistic, watchdog political standpoint. That's never been my game, so I'm not qualified to speak to that. I've always been more commercial from that standpoint.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. By the way, if anyone has any questions, feel free to put it in the chat. So, but I guess to unpack there, keeping it, I don't want to go into policy territory because not topic of this conversation, know your expertise, but I think cancel culture maybe is relevant to what you were talking about. But from like publishing the wrong content, but also going back to the New York Times, like, do you see, one, I guess with the New York Times, that guy was like, everyone wanted him out, right? And we could debate, and I don't think for our purposes we should debate like whether he should have been out or not. But I think, do you think that's really important now for brands that they have to, like, how do they watch the content they're putting out to make sure, right? Because that's a media companies getting in trouble, but also you see it with like this Black Tuesday stuff on Instagram. How do brands make sure that their content they're putting out is on par and doesn't get them canceled, and they don't have that lashing, I guess, from the audience?
Right. It just goes back to have a strategy and an editorial mission statement and stick to it very tightly and don't deviate. And in challenging times, in times of global pandemics, in times of, cultural strife, it's incredibly difficult, but just be authentic with your messaging, and it doesn't even have to be too intense. I believe Amazon took a position on Black Lives Matter that was pretty straightforward. It wasn't verbose and flowery. It was, there's a significant portion of their warehouse and distribution capabilities, I believe, employ a lot of the African-American population. And so they certainly had to take a stand and take a position from that standpoint. But they should just be true to what their situation is and how they want to support their employees and support their team. And so if it's authentically focused on supporting your team, your customers, and it's how you feel, I think it's, once again, a topic you should not tread into lightly, because there's such intense overreaction sometimes that in one respect you can kind of dismiss it because it's just overreaction, and there's always a troll out there looking to call you out, and there's always someone, they're looking for any reason to just blow someone up. But it's just unfortunate that a lot of times that situation stifles good and meaningful conversation.
Yeah, and I think again, it goes back to all the things we were talking about, where like, do you need to filter content? To what extent do you need to filter content? And
look, let's get specific. Like me personally, I have strong beliefs around everything that's gone on recently, and our leadership in DC, the president, and I'm apolitical. Like, I don't do politics. I don't post about it. I don't talk about it. I just steer clear from it. And it's not like it's just incredibly difficult. And it is my lack, I think about this, is my lack of position the wrong position? You know what I mean? The fact that I'm not taking a position, is that actually, is silence not a good thing? I don't know. I struggle with that. Like, what do you do? Like, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it really depends on, the stakeholders that you have and sort of who's involved in the organization. I was reading about Nike and Colin Kaepernick, and reading some stuff about firms that do, marketing specifically towards the African-American community. And I think for many, at least if you're a mainstream brand, you can't ignore, I think you have to take a stance now. I think millennials, Generation Z, they expect, and there was actually a study done, and I published something about it. I want to say the number was like 47% of millennials want a CEO who is active and has a position on social issues. And that's, I think, really important now for consumers to believe that the brand isn't just putting out a statement, but believes in what they say. And, I use Ben and Jerry's as a great example of, like, Ben and Jerry's didn't matter what they put out on Black Tuesday, because people know they're authentic. They for years have championed, you know, causes that no one touched. And they took very controversial positions. Patagonia is another one. I met Patagonia wouldn't do business with Wall Street, and they were getting tons of sales from them. And all those people, it was a status symbol to have a Patagonia, you know, Goldman Sachs vest, and they felt that didn't represent their brand. So when I think companies like a Nike or Patagonia or Ben & Jerry's put out a statement, you know, people believe it because one, they're authentic, but two, you know, they've been doing it before it, you know, you have to do it. I think what the future of you know, what I call brand activism, I didn't coin that term, is the executives and the brands need to be proactive on social issues rather than reactive on social issues. And I don't know where that leaves, you know, folks like media companies, right? You know, is you know, the New York Times, right? Which, yes, they lean left. It was really, I think, surprising the backlash they received. Of, you know, they published something from a U.S. senator. People are like, oh, that's controversial, and like they shouldn't have published that. So I don't know, like, you know, I think brands, there's a clear indication of where they need to head, and I think they do need to be more active. But like for a media company, you know, I don't know how you balance. You want both sides, but at the same time, do you really want both sides?
Well, no. I mean, that it's just, you have to live eat where you live. I don't know if that's the right phrase, but consumer brands, like you've mentioned, right? Ben & Jerry's, Patagonia, Nike, big consumer brands, they have a perspective and a point of view, and they have to support, they have to make statements. Media companies, if you're an objective media company, your job is to just state the facts, tell the truth. There's place for news and delivering the information in a very transparent and fact-driven way. And then there's room for editorial, where, you know, you can kind of compartmentalize the editorial. If you're going to take a position and you're one of the media companies that's gone left or right, you just have to live in that space. And this, once again, it's just my unique situation. Live in the B2B world. So I work with brands that don't probably want to take a position, but it's probably not. Once again, they have to have meaningful support to their stakeholders and really stand up for the right thing with virtues and just do the right thing. It might be simplifying it, but if I'm a B2B company, I would stick to my knitting. And honestly, and this might be generational. I'm 50, and I'll rant and rave about sales and marketing methods, but the moment things get political, I zip up. Now,
Yeah.
am I wrong for not using, you know, my horsepower to do that? You know, I don't know.
Yeah, it's probably not something we're going to figure out in this conversation. I know what the right thing to do is.
Well, I'm trying to have a conversation here that's a little different. Instead of me spouting platitudes about marketing, like, I'm telling you something I struggle with.
Yeah. And I get it. I think, you know, that's a lot of companies struggled with it. And we sort of, you know, I don't know if you saw what happened with the CrossFit CEO. He made comments that were inappropriate. And there's a real possibility that CrossFit is done. I meant Reebok pulled its sponsorship. A lot of big influencer athletes who affiliate with CrossFit have pulled their affiliation with CrossFit. And that's sort of like, you know, to your point, B2C or to B2B, like a lot of them don't have to deal with that cancel culture as much yet. I don't know if that's going to change, but I think, I definitely, you know, understand what you're saying. I guess, you know, with 4 minutes left, I try to keep these to 45 minutes. You know, one of the last questions I thought I wanted, you know, to ask you is, I'm a fan of Axios, and also I'm a fan of newsletters and stuff in general. You know, do you see that more people are like shying away from long form content to, you know, these shorter, like Axios? They're known for those bullets, and they're trying to keep it to like, you know, whatever, 500 words or less. You know, newsletters, people are like, oh, I skimmed the newsletter, I don't even click the link to go to it. You know, I think that's, you know, with Twitter, people get their news from Twitter, which is both good and bad, but it's like, what is 100? They've increased, I think it's 240 characters now, or 280, I think is the character limit now. What do you think of that? I guess both from a media point of view and then even like brands in general, should they be publishing, maybe stop publishing long form content and go to this more short form content, quote unquote?
Just like anything, it depends. I mean, what's your audience want? At the end of the day, if you know your audience, and this pertains to the last topic we were discussing, if you know your audience and you cater to your audience and you try to affect change for your audience from their perspective, from within, sticking to your, once again, your editorial mission statement and your strategy. If you know your audience, you have to know if I have this debate actually every single day as far as like an 800-word post. Well, what about the scanner? What about the person that's just going to zip through, and just give me the headlines, right? So like the New York Times, their morning email, it's a couple bullet points, and then the rest of the story. So to gain the respect and to do the work, you need to publish long form content because there is so many, like in local media, right? So I'll kind of use a local media example. And I started my career in local media and local broadcast. Broadcast TV is a mile wide and an inch deep, and everything comes in 30-second, 60-second sound bites. And they just give you a broad perspective in a short amount of time, and then everything's for 6 and 11. Newspapers and authentic publishers, print publishers, have a more of a long-form enterprise journalism point of view in which they're willing to do the work and just keep, really dig for the information. And I'd rather have published more and then create vignettes and smaller activations from that than basically live in that world of just small vignettes and activations. So I feel like you always have to manage a portfolio and do the right thing for your audience. But I have profound respect for those that can really go deep, do the work, publish the content, have, and I'll say this with webinars, right? It doesn't have to be written, it can be a 45-minute webinar of intense knowledge. Well, it's really hard to consume a lot of intense information in 45 minutes, but it's certainly wonderful to break that 45 minutes up into lots of smaller vignettes into more digestible content. You can't have the digestible stuff, and it's easier to have the digestible vignettes if you take the time to produce the long form first. And so that's kind of a philosophy. Another philosophy I have is do the work, do the long form content, create the premium assets. Once you do that premium asset, you can live off of that premium asset for months. It feeds your beast of social media. It creates smaller activations, and it's hyper efficient. Content ROI, you hear that all the time. Well, what's the ROI on this content? The ROI on this blog? Look, if you have a theme and a meaningful, research-oriented position paper, white paper, or an ebook, or whatever, you get ROI in that content because it creates lots of little things, lots of little vignettes that spin out over months and months and months. So you're just squeezing a lot of value out of those things. And I always strongly encourage that model, that perspective, because it just creates a lot of efficiencies and just gets a big return. So
great. Well, Jeff, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. If you guys like this type of content, subscribe to the channel. I do this weekly. My next conversation next week is with Kevin Barry, who's a reporter at a local ABC affiliate, and we'll be talking about how he sources stories, finds his stories, and communicates that to his audience. So thank you again so much, and look forward to seeing everyone next week.
All right, had fun. Glad we could share. Try to be a little different and jazz it up a little bit. So happy to have the conversation on anyone that wants to connect with me on LinkedIn. I'll take any connection.
Yeah, I'm gonna post it. I'll share with everyone your contact information, and stuff, and it'll be Excellent. In the YouTube channel description too.
Okay,
great.
Thanks so much.
Have a good one.
Enjoy. Okay, thanks.